The sound of satin, this is what I'm going to sing. Sounds of satin, this is what I'm going to sing. I feel the blues coming. I wonder what the blues will bring. Drowning a drowsy, syncopated tune, rocking back and forth to a mellow croon, I heard a Negro play. Down on Lenox Avenue the other night, by the pale dull pallor of a one-bulb lamp. He did a lazy sway, he did a lazy sway to the tune of those weary blues. With his ebony hands on each ivory key, he made that poor piano moan with melody. Oh, blues! Swaying to and fro on his rickety stool, he played that sad, raggy tune like a musical fool. Sweet blues, coming from a black man's soul. Oh, blues, in a deep song voice with a melancholy tone. I heard that Negro sing, that old piano moan. Ain't got nobody in all this world, ain't got nobody but myself. I'm going to quit my frowning and put my troubles on the shelf. Thump, thump, thump went his foot on the floor. He played a few chords, then he sang some more. I got the weary blues and I can't be satisfied. I got the weary blues and I can't be satisfied. I ain't happy no more and I wish that I had died. And far into the night he crooned that tune. The stars stopped playing and went to bed while the weary blues echoed through his head. He slept like a rock or a man that was dead. Weary Blues, a poem by famous poet Langston Hughes. This version of the poem is altered. The fifth line of the poem originally read gaslight, but in this poem he replaced it with one bulb light to make it more modern. And this version is also from a 1958 reading of the poem by Langston with the accompaniment of the Doug Parker Band. So, welcome. My name is Charles Carr, and welcome to Philly Loves Poetry, a collaborative program between the Philadelphia Moonstone Arts Center and PhillyCAM. The focus of our program is to give our audience, both here and at home, the appreciation of the rich culture of poetry in the city of Philadelphia. We have over 50 organizations in this city that in some way promote the love of poetry, either through poetry readings or special poetry events, sponsor poetry workshops for poets of all ages at all stages of their development, and publish poems in journals and books, both print and online, and provide Philadelphia with a rich diversity of all the styles of poetry that exist in the world today. So on any given night or any given day in Philadelphia, somewhere close to where you live or work, you can hear some poems. So tonight, this is the second series of something that we started. It was called The Music of Poetry and the Poetry of Music, which is going to combine both of those rich artistic expressions into one tonight. And we have two remarkable local Philadelphia treasures that are going to be performing in our guest tonight. The first to my left is Trapeta Mayson. Trapeta is a poet and educator. She's a recipient of a 2014 Art and Change grant and a 2007 Transformation Award from the Leeway Foundation. Trapeta is the author of She Was Once Herself, and her work has been published in the American Poetry Review, Aesthetica, Creative Works Annual Review, and Margie, the annual Journal of Poetry, among others. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And to her left is Monnette Sudler. Monnette is a Philadelphia guitarist, composer, arranger, band leader, performer, poet, singer, and recording artist. Monnette learned folk songs at her uncle's feet growing up in the rich musical neighborhood of Germantown. Monnette joined the mostly Philly group The Sounds of Liberation in the 70s and climbed steadily in her career, going on to work with Archie Shepp, Cecil McBee, Grover Washington Jr., Hugh Masekela, Reggie Workman, Steve Torrey, Philly Joe Jones, Hamiette Bluette, Odeon Pope, Kenny Barron, and poet and treasurer Sonia Sanchez. So welcome. to you both, and thank you for coming. So my first question, of course, is how did this all happen? What this merger of a poet and a musician, and poetry and music to you? Where did that all start, and how did it come together? Can you tell us?
Well, let's see, I met Trapeta about 20 years ago, and through the October Gallery, and which was on 3rd Street.
Yeah, around Arch, yeah.
Yeah, 3rd Arch. And so I used to go there from time to time and listen to the poets that frequented the October Gallery. And Trapeta was, she was part of the production team there, right? Yeah. So we started talking about collaborating around that time.
I see. And so where did that, so this started 20 years ago, and how did it evolve? I mean, how did you evolve it? I mean, into really, I mean, I think you told me that they're going to have a CD coming out. So.
Yeah, at the end of this month. So, I mean, as Monnette said, we've known each other for a long time.
Right.
And I think it just as friends and just as individual artists creating our work. And we've been involved in so many projects over the years through the Art Sanctuary, and we were both teaching artists there and just having mutual respect. I think I did a poetry book, and then Monnette, of course, has several CDs. And somewhere along the lines through our collaboration with the various groups and organizations and performances, we started with Sisters in Music and Poetry and did a CD a couple years ago. We were calling it SCAT.
Okay.
And it was very much about highlighting the music and the poetry. Often you have music and poetry that comes together, maybe like the music is the backup to the poetry or something like that. But we were really intentional about making it, I guess, equally and separately excellent work, and then bringing it together to merge as one. So we've been doing this for a while, and we have a CD project coming out at the end of August.
What's the title of the CD?
This is how we get through. It's called This is how we get through.
That's a
yeah.
great title.
Yes.
I love it. So how do you blend word and chords and music? I mean, of course, jazz doesn't lend itself, to that medium probably more so than any other form of music in this country. But how do you go about molding that together into one cohesive art form?
It's just being sensitive to the words, to the written word, musically. And then sometimes I might have a composition that's already written, and then Trapeta may mold her words to fit my piece. So we kind of do that a lot, back and forth.
That's great. And where do you perform? I mean, where have you been performing? Where can people see more of you?
Well, we used to do a lot of residencies in Buffalo, New York. We did
Yeah.
a lot of collaborations there, and we would collaborate with other artists from South Africa and we did several plays there. And so we've done things with The Painted Bride.
Yeah.
And also.
Well, that was a great project. Yeah, that was the first, I think it was like a poetry play. We had the band and Gerald Veasley. I'm trying to remember all the musicians that participated in that.
Yeah.
It was,
Frank Williams.
yeah, that was a great project. But yeah, so we, as Monnette said, I think the residencies are really important, particularly the ones we had in Buffalo, because we were able to create projects that then we toured to different schools.
Okay.
We also have performed at a lot of women-centered events, because particularly with this CD, it's very heavy on, it's talking about this is how we get through, but they're really subjects that are, I would say global subjects, but they focus a lot on women, particularly African-American women or women of color. It's more like about uplifting, encouraging, supporting. So it runs the gamut, and we've performed at parks, rec centers, and mostly residencies.
And how, I mean, if somebody says, I want to hear more of you together, how do they contact you?
Well, we both have websites.
Okay.
MonnetteSudlerMusic.com and
Okay.
Trapeta Mayson, M-A-Y-S-O-N,
Okay.
.com.
Okay.
And on both of our websites, there will be a schedule for the listening parties that we're having for the CD, in addition to performances together and separately.
When is that? You have a date for that listening?
We say the end of August, and I'm sure artists can understand. Maybe you can talk about the stage we're at right now with the.
Well, let's just say this has been a work in progress
Yes.
for a couple of years.
Okay.
But we started, and then we did several pieces, and then we took a hiatus. So now we're back at it, and we're almost done. We're in the mixing stage now, which is very good.
Yes.
So yeah, we should be a few more weeks, end of August.
So this is something that you're doing. Are you doing it under a label, or is there a production?
We're doing it ourselves,
You're doing it
and that's
yourself.
with the
You-
busy schedule of
Sure.
performances, traveling, also working, other jobs outside
Right.
of being an artist. So we're doing it ourselves, but and I think we've now are approaching it. I say with a vengeance, because we're very much committed to the project. It's a little different than the last one. I mean, again, we were really intentional about making sure that the music and the poetry can speak separately, but blend well together. And looking at different styles. Even today in the performance, we're performing a couple of those, and they're really different styles. I mean, it's still in the jazz genre, but I think maybe you could talk about that more.
Yeah, it's all different styles. Like little jazz, like the piece we're gonna do today. It's jazz. It's kind of a mixture of jazz and avant-garde and little tidbits of different styles of guitar music. And then there's another piece that I've written that's kind of like a Elizabeth Cotton kind of guitar playing.
Okay.
And then
And what are your roots in the guitar? You mean there's a very impressive list of jazz players that I read off. And where does your jazz play? I mean, have you formally trained, or how did that all come about as an artist?
Well, I graduated from Temple Music School.
Okay.
Esther Boyer. And I started out playing folk music, actually. So I have a deep roots in folk music.
Okay.
And I still go there because I enjoy that. And then I started playing jazz with the Sounds of Liberation by Lancaster, and jazz was kind of a modal jazz at that time. And then Byron Lancaster was more into avant-garde playing as well. So then we gravitated into the avant-garde realm. So I spent a lot of time the Loft series in New York City, playing with Sam Rivers and Dave Holland and a lot of people in the avant-garde scene. So I still enjoy playing that style of music as well. And I like R&B, I like reggae, I just like music, I just love music. So.
And for you, Trapeta, you're originally from Liberia, correct?
Yes, I am.
And so where are your roots in poetry?
The poetry. Well, I am originally from Liberia. I came to the States when I was quite young with my family, and I grew up in North Philadelphia in Germantown. So a lot of my early work spoke a lot about the community that I grew up in North Philadelphia. It spoke a lot about just highlighting the urban community. And then later, I did a chapbook that centered on mental illness and from an immigrant woman's perspective. And I'm a clinical social worker, and that's my day job. And so a lot of that was focused on just mental illness. My current collection is very much about immigration and deportation, particularly with where we are in the world today. A lot of poets went the MFA route. I didn't go the MFA route. A lot of my earlier work, I would say I'm more of a poet for the page, and the only time I really do performance with poetry is when I collaborate
Right.
with Monnette. That's pretty much what I've done. But my roots, I didn't do the whole, as I said, MFAs, more like writing workshops, just innately wanting to tell the larger stories.
Right.
We were just talking about the Nigerian writer, Chimamanda, also getting her name, talking about that narrative, expanding that narrative and telling the other stories. So I feel in my writing, I want to tell the story about African immigrant people and really center it on why they immigrate to a place, what that means for them, and dig into issues like deportation, government, ICE, and all these things. And I want to capture those voices. And it's not just a story of pain and struggle, but also of celebration. So that's what I try to do in my poetry.
Yeah, with a pushback on that in today's, what's happening in the government, in this society, how do you feel where does that really land? I mean, that's a really important topic. Probably it's the most important topic that we're talking about in this country. But how does that really intersect with, with everything that's going on? How do you feel you have an impact on it?
Yeah, again, for me, it's about those stories. Because often, we get lost in the news flash or the whatever's happening out, whatever's being tweeted or, whatever's happening in the world. But those stories that are considered little stories are the big voices to me. When I look at what happens to women and men who are trying to immigrate to a place, why they come, it's a bigger story. It's not just about people wanting to come to America. On the continent of Africa, where I'm from Liberia, a lot has happened in that country that caused devastation. And a lot of that kind of harkens back to what's going on in America. So people come for different reasons. For me, I don't really care about the noise. I just want to make sure that those voices are highlighted.
Sure.
And I feel that that's my task as a writer to do that.
I was just
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
involved with a project called Transcending Barriers with Sharon Katz and the Peace Train, and we went to Mexico and San Diego and California, and so the whole premise was to get Americans and Mexican children. There were like 250 Mexican children that participated in the concert we did in Mexico, but we were trying to get the American children and their parents to go to Mexico to meet at the borders with the Mexican children and their parents. But not so many American children went, because their parents were afraid to go across the border because of all the different propaganda they've heard about Mexico and Tijuana. So, but the experience, there was so many Mexican children and parents that were at the border and they were singing and they were, ready to be a part of this merger. And they met with the people that did go across the border. And then we had a major concert at the museum there. And it was really an eye-opening experience to see these children that they were just so eager to be a part of this project, and they learned all of these songs, and they were just really prepared. And they had people from Cuba as well that were part of this whole Transcending Barriers concept, and the Peace Train had come up with. So it was, I think things like that, programs like that are very helpful to kind of initiate some dialogue and some movement in a positive way.
Is that something that you want to maybe replicate here in Philadelphia or in this area? Do you think that's, of course you're not going to go to the border, but still in all, I think the issues are still there.
Yeah, the issues are there. And I'm sure that that whole concept will expand in some way, because a lot of people were so moved by it that they want to see something else happen,
Sure.
and people were there from all over the country.
Right. So, I mean, we've done some talking. I think we want to listen and to you perform your pieces, so you can take it from here. And you can talk about these pieces and kind of how you reflect on them and how you want us to reflect on them.
Okay. All right, well, thanks for the conversation. It was kind of good to talk this out. So we have a couple of pieces we're going to share today. And I think the first one we're sharing is the one called It's Jazz.
Yeah.
And
And this is a good one because it was, I asked Trapeta if she could write a poem for the Philadelphia Guitar Summit that I have every year. And so this was for the third one. And so this is a poem called It's Jazz that Trapeta wrote for that.
and I was thinking a lot about the guitar. So that's the focus. And this is about to be the Guitar Summit's 10th year. And this is a summit that Monnette started.
And where does that take place and when?
It takes place in Philadelphia.
Right.
I've been using different venues,
Okay.
so I haven't solidified the venue for 2019 yet. But I did the World Cafe Live this year. Yeah, so it was really
That's a
excellent.
nice venue.
Yeah, it's one of the
It's always
few,
a nice venue.
one of the few large music summits by a female
Yeah.
jazz musician, and it's all guitar. Yeah. So it's called It's Jazz. The first pluck will have you hooked, gliding on slick strings, longing for strumming, tapping that rigid neck, so much power inlaid with grace, jumping into that well of hollowed wood, that well from which all good things flow. You're here now. It's jazz. So what you come for? Healing? You want those spiritual 12 bars of blues today? The kind that's brewed in the deep south, kin to the continent, the stuff that work songs, chants, and shouts are all about? You want Andalusia, the mystery of the Moors, the vigor, rhythm of flamenco, the cante jundo, the deep song, hands clapping, feet stamping, force and beauty and despair? You're here now. It's jazz. You want to be amplified, vibrations resonating. You come for jazz, for music with roots, from rut gut to mellow bellied. Ooh, is jazz. Sweet syncopations, fretting and trials and tribulations charted. You need to be rocked. You need to be funked. You need to be countrified and bluegrass. What about your soul? Your soul needs some finger picking. What about the Rasta song? What about that pop and your smooth mariachi, metal and acoustics? You're here now. It's jazz. You need her, that guitar, that elegant tease, that thump and bop, that hipster, that hippie. You need her, that machine, that mother, that magnificent monster. You are here now, and she beckons in her jazzy glory. Put your ear to her lovely bones. Put your ears to her lovely bones. Let her stir you. Let her move you. You are here now. It's jazz. That's it. Yeah. I'm having a throat thing, so sorry. I think every time we do that, it's different. And it's jazz.
It's different in the musical sense, or
It's different in the musical sense. And it's different when my voice goes hoarse, but different.
Well, I mean, going through that, I mean, musically, I mean, you could hear all levels
Yeah.
of, you know, of music, of jazz music, Spanish music, which was wonderful.
Yeah, it's just sort of highlighting. I think at one point you had a theme about the Guitar Summit, like the guitar through the ages and the different things, how powerful the instrument is. So we're trying to capture that in the poem. So we're doing a piece called Blues for Junior, and I actually wrote this poem for my brother who passed away in 2012. But it's more of a celebratory piece about just men and African American men in general. So it's called Blues for Junior.
This is a blues for Junior and all the brothers in between. This is a blues for Junior and all the brothers in between. Feels like the same old tired script from an urban movie scene. Blues for Junior.
But I'm gonna write you a new one where you take on the leading role. Said, I'm gonna write you a new one where you take on the leading role so life can shine on you, brother, feed your spirit and soothe your soul.
Blues for Junior, but tell me, sweet Junior, you wanna be a hero or a king? Sweet, sweet Junior, are you a hero or a king? I've got your high crown waiting, steel cape with golden wings. Blues for Junior.
Said, this is a blues for you, Junior, and all those brothers in between. This is your blues, Junior, and all the brothers in between. Feels like the same old tired script from an urban movie scene.
Blues for Junior, but in my show you're protected. Got wings hitched to your back. In the show you're protected. Got angel wings on your back. Said I'm gonna block all harm from you. Shots, lightning, random attacks. Blues for Junior.
And when that award season come round, you will be there with your heavy grin. Said when that award season come around, you will be there with your heavy grin, arms extended and knowing this time you're gonna win.
Blues for Junior. You're gonna take on this world, dear brother, wearing your heart on your sleeves. You're gonna take on this world, dear brother, wearing your heart on your sleeves. Some folks tend on impressing you. They won't just let you be. Blues for Junior.
When you backed into a corner and you can't go left or right, said when you are backed into that corner and you can't go left or right, remember this song, brother. Remember your purpose is to take flight.
Blues for Junior. This is a blues for Junior and all the brothers in between. This is a blues for Junior and all the brothers in between. Feels like the same old tired script from an urban movie scene. Blues for Junior.
This is a blues for you, Junior, but got splashes of color and fame. This is your blues, Junior, but got splashes of color and fame. Some folks like to dwell on the bottom, but brothers like you aim to rise like cream.
Blues for Junior. This is a blues for Junior and all the spots in between. This is a blues for Junior. We got splashes of color and fame. Some folks like to dwell on the bottom, but folks like you aim to rise like cream.
Yeah. Love your voice on that. Yep, so that was Blues for Junior. And we're going to do a piece called Body Move. This is going to be a part of a larger project. It's a story of Dinah. And Dinah was a slave that was an enslaved woman that was at the Stanton plantation. Stanton House is in Germantown. And there's a little plaque that commemorates Dinah as, you know, the colored servant. And I always wanted to know what's her story. There's a bigger story here. So because there's not as much known about Dinah as there is on a Judge, I'm creating a series of poems that will be a play about her life. And then this is just an excerpt of one of them, and it goes with your spirit song, if you want to talk about your song.
This is a song called the Free Spirit Song, and I actually composed this song for the Art Sanctuary play, and so I revised it for my own personal use. And it's called the Free Spirit Song, and it's pretty self-explanatory.
Okay.
Even when pinned in, when hog-tied, when boxed, when walled off, you've got to move yourself through the domestic days and nights. Even when somebody need feeding and silver platters must gleam, fires kept roaring, slop bucket emptied, meadows weeded and tended, cotton washed and ironed, fingers tacked and darned, body must keep moving, body keep moving, body move. You tower of black womanhood, you must hold up this column. Can't collapse here, can't crumble here. You must make nimble your limbs. You must mind the shadow cast upon your face. You woman, you are a precise timekeeper. You are your own map. Tell them that you have to be unhinged from your rote memory of chores and labor holding you back. You have to demand your freedom. Your body can't fight this flesh, can't keep her locked in. She's been simmering far too long. Body keep moving, body keep moving, body move.
There ain't nothing in this world like my spirit. When I feel the weight of bondage riding on my back, I visualize I'm free. And oh yes, can't you see that it ain't gonna be this way for all my days? There ain't nothing in this world like my freedom. When I feel the weight of bondage riding on my back, I visualize I'm free. And oh yes, can't you see that it ain't gonna be this way for all my days? Free to raise my children, free to love and marry, free to learn and prosper, free to earn my way, free to praise and worship, free to play my drum, 'cause the march to freedom surely shall be done. There ain't nothing in this world like my spirit. When I feel the weight of bondage riding on my back, I visualize I'm free. And oh yes, can't you see that it ain't gonna be this way for all my days? There ain't nothing in this world like my freedom. When I feel the weight of bondage riding on my back, I visualize I'm free, and oh yes, can't you see that it ain't gonna be this way for all my days? Free to raise my children, free to love and marry, free to learn and prosper, free to earn my way, free to praise and worship, free to play my drum, 'cause the march to freedom surely shall be done. March to freedom surely shall be done, 'cause the march to freedom surely shall be done.
I love that song. So I think before we were going to do the an instrumental, and then I could do a poem before. I think we have time. We'll do the last piece, yeah. You want me to do that poem?
Okay.
Great.
So what we'll do, I'm going to share a poem without the music. It's part of that collection, and then Monnette's going to do another song, and then we'll end with our piece together. So this is from the collection yet to be titled, but it's called We're All Trees Here. These are the poems that are about immigration. They are talking about us, mother. It's us they're talking about, father. Us three sapo trees, one bent with a third leg, a walking stick to study, another gaunt with gout and an eyelid that droops, and me who has swallowed this entire country and spit out hypocrisy. We are the enemies. That's what the placards say. We watch it on television, the red-faced ones, the stringy hair ones, the ones in suits and pulpits, in schools and offices, with badges and gavels, the ones we feed and clean for, the ones with violent pens and sewn lips. They brush our shoulders daily, first a nudge, now a shove. What does 5 decades in this place get us? A failing green card. Father, you told me that we are back in the days of hiding, like in the 70s when we had no papers, and every passing white man in a suit broke you into a chase. And I used to hate how you cowered. Forgive me the judgments of childhood. I didn't know our forest was under siege. I didn't know they were clearing our canopy. We are back there again. The placards do not discern. Our army of accusers have knighted a new leader. He is a bloated finger pointer. He has carved an eye on our foreheads. I for, in my country you will never be safe. I for ignoring that I snatched this land from others. I for I have invaded and ravished your homeland, and I won't let you rest in this stolen land. I for immigrant, and all of us are lumped as one. All of us are trees in this woodland, and every day somewhere in this place there is someone brandishing an axe. There is someone chipping at our massive base. There is someone wanting to topple us.
Beautiful. My turn. This is a song called, it's a standard called Polka Dot Moonbeams.
say, as I was sitting here listening to this, there's a contemporary jazz guitarist that my wife and I, Russell Malone.
Oh, yes.
And boy, that just had that kind of feel to it.
Okay.
That beautiful, relaxing, but sound to it. That was gorgeous. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Do you have some more poetry and music, or we
we have.
Great.
Yeah, we have. I think we're gonna share one more, right?
Okay.
Right. So I'll explain this one. This is from a series called Home Visit Liberia. So I will try to get home, back to Liberia as often as I can. But this is from a visit in last January, and there's a farm area that we went to. It's called Kokoya, where my family has a farm. And I was just thinking about the rhythm in the car and the day, and so this poem is just called On the Way to the Farm in Kokoya. And so this is an example of, I think the poetry came first, or the music was there.
Poetry came first, yeah.
Yeah, because the ones we've done, sometimes the music comes first, then the poetry, sometimes it's together. I think this one, the poem was written, and then we messed around with the music.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm stalling because I don't remember how it starts.
You start.
Okay. All right. We had just left the city, and we are pressed knee to knee, thigh to thigh, sweat on skin in the back of Richard's pickup truck. Bob Marley first booms from the speaker, and then the lesser lauded Lucky Doobie, who pauses for his trio of background singing ladies to chat to us. Do you want to be a well-fed slave or a hungry free man? Do you want to be a well-fed slave or a hungry free man? We are in Liberia, and it is 5 days before Trump's immigration travel ban is announced, and I don't yet have an answer to Lucky's question, but my head bobs along to his roots rock reggae as we drive by towns with names so sweet like candy or honest grown folks love that it stumps me. Botota, Bekon, Same, Sakoko, Batala, Zienzu, Mamu, Salala. My niece and the others laugh as I mouth each word, practicing pillar. They tell me that some names mean by the river or water, or by the road or lake, or simply town. But I only hear music as each one passes quickly in the rearview mirror, flies away, off and away from the one lone highway we're on, away from Lucky's urgent crony. Do you want to be a well-fed slave or a hungry free man? Do you want to be a well-fed slave or a hungry free man? None of us answer as we watch each town repeat itself with the same barefoot children in coal pots and empty pockets and laughing elders and gorgeous, gorgeous black faces frozen in smiles, repeating and disappearing into dirt roads and dust as our head bobs to Botota, Beko, Same, Sakoko, Batala, Zienzu, Mamu, sweet, sweet, Salala. Do you want to do maybe in spite of it all, oldie but goodie?
Oh, I thought we were going to have more discussion, but okay.
Just sitting here like he wants some more music.
Let's
Do
talk.
we have some questions from the audience?
Well, one question I do have, because you did say that, you work in social service and you really work with, very troubled people. How does that, bleed into your poetry? Or does it? Because some people leave their art, and then they go to work, and then they come back to their art, and sometimes the two don't meet. But there's so much happening, within us, in our daily work world that, how's that come out in your work?
Yeah, so it comes out, but not in the immediate, I would say. For me, because I'm working on this collection and we're working on a CD, the headspace is really important to be able to focus. One of the issues I've had in the past, because of having to be a full-time artist and a full-time employed person, it's been difficult to be able to create. So when Monnette, she wasn't joking when she said the CD has taken almost 2 years, whereas some people can go in the studio and just knock it out.
Sure.
So it does, it's very present. I work with, I don't do direct service as much anymore. I do have a private therapeutic practice, but in my role now, I manage programs with people with, for people with serious, persistent mental illness, schizophrenia and things like that. So I think a lot about the human condition in general. And sometimes I'm sketching little things here and there, and for me it's just a coping mechanism. The writing for me has always been more than just, it's the craft of writing. It's more of a survival piece. So in my work, I have used poetry and writing as a way to help people manage and deal with their own issues. And then myself, sometimes I'm writing about these things, not about the people or the individuals, more or less about the circumstances.
Right. As an artist, how do you really, as an artist and you really have a major management position. Because I'm talking to you, 100 people that you're kind of responsible for. So that's a lot of accountability. How do you segment and find time for your art? Do you have a certain discipline of these days I write, these days I work on my art, and these I devote to specific stuff? Or is it just, hey, this is just immediate to me now, and I'm...
It's a little bit of both. It's intentional. Particularly, there's an urgency with wanting to get these stories out. So for me, the practice that has been working a lot lately is just really early in the morning. I take some guidance from Buchi Amachita. She was a Nigerian writer that I really value, and also Lucille Clifton. And these were individuals who also had other matters to contend with.
Right.
They didn't have that MFA, and they weren't teaching at the university. They were out there doing things, working, raising their kids. And I remember in both scenarios, these ladies would get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning to try to get some writing done. So I get up really early and work on projects, editing and writing. And sometimes I may take a block of time on the weekend to go somewhere and work on the piece. It's hard. I wish I could do it full time. I'm not really able to do that. So it's just a balancing act that I'm doing.
Is that the same for you, Monnette? In a way, or is it, in terms of your working on your art and creating pieces?
Well, right now I'm kind of in a different place right now in my life. So,
the lucky place.
I'm in the lucky place.
What place is that?
Well, I don't work anymore.
Okay.
So,
well, you work.
I work as an artist.
Sure.
And I teach, but I don't step outside that realm anymore. I used to have to do that, and it's hard to balance. And I raised 2 sons, so when I think back, I'm like, how in the heck did I do that? But I did it. You just kind of put one foot in front of the other, and you just make it happen. And so my sons, they're doing well, and I think I did well with them, raising them.
Wonderful.
And
are they musicians also? Do they play music at all?
Well, my oldest son, he is a producer of sorts, and he does a lot of production, but he has kind of changed path a little bit, because now he's doing vintage clothing, and he opened up a store. I'll plug it, called Culture Couture Vintage Clothing.
Is that in Philadelphia?
It is in Philadelphia on Germantown and Johnson Streets.
Germantown Jazz? I don't know this.
Yeah. So then now he's starting to make clothes, and then my youngest son, he's a carpenter. He has his own carpentry business called Honesty Carpentry Business. So
Good plug for him.
I know,
Yes.
right? Got a plug, you know. So they're both doing very well, and they have their families. And
You know, I'm a lover of jazz, but when I talk to people, you know, they say, what Charles you usually talk about and play a lot of, you know, kind of standard. I mean, I'm a Miles Davis, John Coltrane, you know, in that whole venue of the 60s and the 70s.
right.
And people say, well, what's new in jazz? I mean, who are the new jazz players and who's the new jazz scene in Philadelphia? And for me, it's sometimes hard to say, you know, I mean, in terms of, because there's not really kind of the platform given to jazz music like it was. I mean, I, as a young man, I used to go to Peps and the Showboat and places
Right.
like in Philly, where it was all over the place. And so,
Well, now they have a few clubs. The Bonham Brothers, you know, they have South on Broad Street.
Mhm.
It's a restaurant and jazz club
Right.
called South.
South, right.
And they have another place called Paris in Germantown, and another spot called Relish. And they still have jazz music regularly, and also, oh man, what is that place on Sampson Street? Chris's Jazz House,
Press.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the Philadelphia Clef Club, there's really a lot of excellent young people coming out there that they're outstanding players, and they're going on to Juilliard and Temple University and different colleges,
Yeah.
and to Berkeley and studying music, and they're really outrageous. They're really good. Yeah.
That's wonderful to hear. That's wonderful to hear. Do you have anything else for us, or we exhausted the?
No, what our oldie but
Can you
goodie.
take us
All
out
right.
on something?
Sure.
Yeah, we can.
Great.
This is like a old ancient. This an old piece. Dust might come out when
What's the name of this again?
I. In spite of it all.
Oh yeah. Okay.
This was on the first CD.
Okay.
I think I started.
Okay.
In spite of it all, we learn to love ourselves. In spite of it all, we learn to face those wounds of the past. And sometimes they were stinging wounds filled with salt. We learn to lick them clean. We learn to let them heal. For we are the women now. There is so much beauty in a sister who loves herself. You stand up straight without tipping over. We can open our eyes wide and look at this here skin with the heavy thighs and the expanded hips, and we are satisfied. All those interested in disturbing our peace of mind are denied entrance here. We do not wish to be put through changes, not hit, cursed, or manipulated. See, you've got to love us or leave us alone. Love us or leave us alone. In spite of all the nonsense, we learn to love ourselves. In spite of folks telling us we ain't nothing, we think we all that. We ain't light enough, ain't dark enough, too black, too proud. In spite of the lonely nights and the hard days, and all the history that never become her stories. In spite of the fathers that didn't want us, the mothers that pushed us away when we needed it so much, we learn to love ourselves. So this poem is for all of us who can smile at ourselves every time we can stand up straight without tipping over, for we are balanced now. We are balanced now.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. This was really a real treat for us here at Moonstone and PhillyCAM to have you. And I want to say to our audience, once again, if they want to follow you, will you give your email addresses? And
Yes. Trapeta Mayson, TRAPETAMAYSON.com. And you can get information on there.
And my email is Mosu, M-O-S-U, at MonnetteSudlerMusic.com, MONNETTE-SUDLER music.com.
Yeah.
And that's the website as well.
Well, that's
and
great.
Chelsea, also, we want to definitely thank you for this opportunity, and Larry and Moonstone. This has really been great on a Tuesday evening to have such great discussion and music and poetry.
Wow,
And to
great.
PhillyCAM.
Yeah, well, I wanted
Thank
to
you
say
very
before
much.
we break away, to thank you to the crew of PhillyCAM, who always makes this really happen, and good, accommodating to us and making these shows really good. And so I say to people also, if this is a live broadcast, okay? So if somehow somebody missed it tonight live, it'll be rebroadcast next Tuesday, 6:30, the same time, and run for the duration of the month.
Wow.
So
Okay.
just tell your friends, they say, hey, I didn't get to see you last night because I was doing this or that. You can tell them, you can see me. You can see this show again next week, 6:30, 7:30. And of course, it's channel 66 on Comcast and channel 29 and 30 on Verizon.
Okay.
So thank
Awesome.
you
Great.
again, and good night. Thank you to our audience for coming.